Great. Well, welcome everybody. It's nice to be here, and thanks to Maureen and Furuz from a distance who have really created an incredible fireside here in our local community of Oakville to see people come from all over. Um, and tonight, like I said, it's just relax, sit back, and I'm just going to tell some stories. And the stories are going to come out of a recent trip I took to Haifa. How many of you have been to Haifa? And you could just raise your hand through okay, good, great. So hopefully this will also bring you back some memories of a wonderful time in Haifa, which is the Holy Land for Baha'is around the world. Every time I go to Israel, it just hits me. God clearly had plans for this piece of land, which is probably as big as Rhode Island. It's not a very big place, but all the major religions of the world have a home there, including the Baha'is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you. It's going to feel. Remember those old days when someone would go on a trip and they'd show their slideshow? Well, here it is. We're going to do a similar setting, and every picture hopefully will reach out a story. This was my first shot. I'm sure many of you, this is Ben Gurion Avenue. This is the first shot right when we enter Haifa. And, you know, the title of this shot is The Queen of Carmel. And you could see why, and we're going to see more of it. But as many of you, if you haven't been there or have been there, this particular street, Ben Gurion, is interesting because this is where the German Templars came. And right before 1844, they left Germany and they traveled, not with Lufthansa or British Airways. It was a long trip and a very arduous trip, and probably many people even died along the trip. Why did they come here? Because they have figured out through their study of the Bible that the return of Christ would happen on this mountain, Mount Carmel, and they settled. They settled right here at Mount Carmel, waiting for the return. What's interesting is I don't have pictures of some of the homes, but some of these homes, they have very beautiful inscriptions in German to remind themselves of why they're there. And in Terrace 1, which is all the way up there at the end of the street, there's a house right next to where Baha'u'llah came and pitched his tent. And unfortunately, Baha'u'llah became a bit ill, and Abdul-Baha went to this house right next door where they had pitched and asked the owners of the house if Baha'u'llah could stay a few days inside the house instead of the tent. And the owners graciously, who were German Templars, said absolutely. And then Baha'u'llah stayed there for a few days, and of course, Abdul-Baha thanked them, and then Baha'u'llah eventually left. Now, what's interesting is that house is still there. And if you go see the inscription of what's written at the front entrance in German, it says, "Der Herr ist nah," which in German means the Lord is near. And Baha'u'llah stayed inside the person's house. And it says the Lord is near. That was the inscription above that house, and that house still exists, which is absolutely gorgeous. So this was the first shot. This is I don't know what shot, but you could see the gardens were just absolutely gorgeous. It is springtime. It was the festival of Rezvan. I was there I was blessed to be there for the 9th day and the 12th day of Rezvan. And for those people that don't know what Rezvan is about, Rezvan is the celebration for Baha'is. It's 12 days. And on the 1st and 9th and 12th day, we celebrate. It's the festival where Baha'u'llah declared his mission in Baghdad in 1863. So I was there for the 9th and 12th day of Rezvan. This is a beautiful shot, and I love always when I'm there, I take it because you see these cypress trees that are there. These are the actual cypress trees that were there when Baha'u'llah was there. And he had pitched his tent here as well, in the middle of these cypress trees. They probably weren't as big as they are now. And he told Abdul Baha, his son, to build the shrine of the Bab here. You can't get any closer than that, as you can see. So he literally pointed to where the shrine of the Bab should be built. And Abdul Baha, as you can see, built it literally right there. This is the shrine of the Bab, which is the forerunner of Baha'u'llah, and the history of the Bab's passing when he was executed in 1850. It wasn't until 1908, which is 58 years later, where his body was eventually placed in its final resting place in the shrine here. And it is an amazing story when you think about it, the history of the Bab's faith, but from his passing, sometimes his body wouldn't stay more than a few days at someone's house because of the authorities that were actually looking for it. One of my favorite parts of the story about the martyrdom of the Bab is the prophecies that it fulfilled, many of them. So let's talk about a few of them. Again, it's story time, right? The one prophecy I absolutely love when it comes to the Bab's execution is, His Holiness Christ was told by the people standing at the cross that if you're the King of Kings, why don't you take yourself down off the cross if you're who you say you are? And it was His Holiness Christ that turned upwards and said, God, please forgive them. So they don't know what they're saying. And he implied that he could do this, but he's not going to at this time. And that was the implication, and that's that. Well, it's interesting that in 1850, when the Bab was put on the cross, well, not a cross, but a place where he was going to be executed, he took himself off of it and fulfilled the promise of Christ himself by doing that. As you know, the most beautiful story is there was this gentleman named Sam Khan, who was the person commissioned to execute the Bab. He was a Christian, he was an Armenian, and he went to the Bab and said, I don't want to do this. I have nothing against you, and I really don't want to do this. And the Bab said, if you're sincere, God will relieve you of this duty, but you should continue and fulfill your orders that have been given. And because of that, he put his soldiers, 750 of them, 250 file, to shoot at the Bab. And of course, the story, as many of you know, the shots rang, there was a lot of smoke, the smoke's cleared, and the Bab was gone. He had vanished. And Sam Khan said, I'm not going to do that again. You told me to do it once, I'm out of here. But you see, he fulfilled, there was another prophecy we forget about. What was the prophecy? The prophecy is that when this return, Mehdi, which is called Mehdi, the return in the Muslim faith, that we as Muslims will kill him. So what did the mullahs do? They brought a Christian to kill the Bab. So they could tell the people, you see, he can't be the return because a Christian killed him. It says clearly in the prophecy that a Muslim will kill him. Well, what happened when this happened, Sam Khan left and said, I will not repeat that act. And they had to hurry up and find another colonel, basically, to do the deed, because they got worried. The 10,000 people that were there to watch this started saying, hey, maybe the Bab is who he is. And because they got nervous, they immediately found a Muslim colonel who actually did the act. So the prophecy was fulfilled, and the Bab was killed by a Muslim regiment. And then, of course, the other prophecy was that the body can't be left for the beasts to eat, and that's why they put it in the moat. And they had 2 guards there to make sure that no one touches the body. These guards fell asleep. The Baha'is came and took the body of the Bab, and the rest is history. And now he's here in Haifa in this beautiful shrine of the Bab that you see. Here's a closer look at those cypress trees that I mentioned. earlier on. And here's some people from Oakville, if you know. This is Mr. Erickson from Oakville. And who is this? Jacqueline, who is that? That is your son, Damien, one of my good friends. So I wanted to show these pictures. As you can see, there's a big crowd there. Thank God some of them are wearing masks. But there was a big crowd. Why? Because this was the 9th day of Rezvan, and this was the celebration. And for the 9th day of Rezvan, you actually circumambulate the shrine of the Ba'a. So after the celebration, we all get up, and the Universal House of Justice is there as an institution. The ITC there is there as an institution. They start the circumambulation, and all the pilgrims go first. Then the staff and 3-day visitors like me follow. So the whole thing takes about almost 25, 30 minutes. And it's an interesting experience because that's what the future is going to be. Right now, we can go as Baha'is inside the shrines, but in the future, we will not be able to do that. There'll just be too many people. So we circumambulate, and that's what we did. We go around the shrine and come back, and we all end up in this little courtyard. And if in the background of Damien's head here, that's the old pilgrim house where Abdul Baha and Shohi Effendi would see pilgrims. And then, of course, as you know, as Baha'is, no one could stop hugging each other, even though they weren't supposed to. But anyway, that's another. Some pictures from evening shots of the shrine of the Ba'a. Here you can see this part, the inner shrine here is what Abdul Baha built, which is the stone. And you should know that Abdul Baha said, every stone I placed by myself. And every stone that was the path to get there, I placed by myself, which implies that Abdul Baha went through a lot of trouble to build this shrine. And he eventually fulfilled the promise he made to his father. And the superstructure that you see was built later by Shohi Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i faith. And the architect of this shrine is Sutherland Maxwell, who is a Canadian from Montreal. Now I'm going to give you some night shots. This is the archives building. This is a very interesting building because this building houses all of the original tablets of Baha'u'llah. We don't see all of them as pilgrims. This is just the top part of it. There's a whole underground area for the archives. And a lot of the holy relics from the Holy Family, especially Baha'u'llah, the Ba'a, and Abdul Baha. So this is the front of the archives. So Maureen says, do you mean Abdul Baha actually built it? So yes, Abdul Baha was the person that built where the stone was. But the statement he made was to show the effort that it took to actually build the shrine of the Ba'a, the part that was with the stone. Let me show you again. This part, I don't know if you could see my arrows, but anyway, where you see the stone walls, that's the part that Abdullah built. Anything that's white is the actual superstructure that was built on top of it. So this is the International Archives. Shahin Sobhani loves doors, so he went to the door of the International Archives. And this is the back. I took this picture because I don't know if I was supposed to, but there was no guard, so I just took it. The reason I took this picture, this is the front door. This is how you enter the archives. This back is interesting because right behind this beautiful window, which is, if you've ever seen it from the inside, it's just gorgeous. Right behind this are 3 stands. One stand is the actual picture of Baha'u'llah. Another stand is a painting of Baha'u'llah. And another stand is a painting of the Bab. We don't have a picture of the Bab. We only have a painting of the Bab. So it's just, I thought it'd be nice. I was that close. And as you should know, Baha'u'llah did not want us to have his picture because he doesn't want us to worship him. We should worship God. But we do have the pictures of Abdul Baha because his title was the exemplar. We should follow who Abdul Baha was and what he did. So I thought I'd take this picture just to remind myself of how close I was to the archives. This is the international study of the holy text. This is where a lot of the research department is here that study the holy text. And it's one of the arms of the Universal House of Justice, the governing body of the Baha'is around the world. And that's the seat of the Universal House of Justice, which, believe it or not, it looks brand new, but it was built in the 1980s. It's actually pretty amazing how well this building obviously has kept. Let me show you. Oh yeah, here it is. Shahin at the door of the seat of the Universal House of Justice. And this is the council chamber right above that door. This is where the Universal House of Justice meets and consults. The greatest name, which is right here, Ruya Khanum, the wife of Shohi Effendi, actually placed a box here. And of course, it's all covered up now. And the box was the dust from the most holy spot, which is Baha'u'llah's, the dust from inside the room, obviously not the casket. And she placed it in a box and she placed it here, which is why that's there. I want to say a picture about these pillars. These pillars were made in Italy. They're marble pillars, beautiful. I didn't take a close-up shot of them. But you know, this little town in Italy, it's a village really, is so proud that they built these pillars for the seat of the Universal House of Justice, that all the pillars had to get approved before they were sent. And one pillar had a minor defect that, you know, you and I can't see, but the architects and the people in charge could. So the city council decided to keep that pillar, not to destroy it. And they put it in the middle of their village in Italy and put a plaque on it that this is one of the pillars, a replica of one of the pillars in Haifa, Israel, which is the seat of the Universal House of Justice. And it's become the main square of that village in Italy. So if you ever go there, you'd be pretty stunned to see, they say, hey, wait a minute, that's a pillar from the seat of the Universal House of Justice. So now I am going to tell you some stories about the Junaini Gardens. Junaini Gardens was a very interesting place that I myself didn't know much history about till I went on this particular trip. Baha'u'llah, as many of you know, were exiled, and near the end of his life, when the authorities allowed him to be more free, this was one of the places he would go at least twice a year. And it really was exactly as the name says, a garden. And he would go there, and it was a place he would invite everybody, all the friends and family, to meet him there, and they would have a picnic. So it was a place that was that people were happy, and these are some people that were there, and some of them we know by name. Mishkin Kalam was the last one there, was one of the most famous calligraphers. And Ali was a great poet. He was actually an incredible poet. Nabila Azam is the person that wrote the history of the faith. The Dawnbreakers is Nabila Azam. But this gentleman on the left is for me one of the most interesting gentlemen, Tarozullah Samandari. Tarozullah Samandari met Baha'u'llah a few times. And he met him as a very young boy, all the way to a teenager. And he's the one that met Abdul Baha. He met Shohi Effendi. He was there for the establishment of the Universal House of Justice, and he was the hand of the cause of God. So he saw the entire history of the faith from the time of Baha'u'llah. Some stories that I heard on this trip, actually, about Mr. Samandari. Mr. Samandari, when he was young, he was playing with his fellow friends in one of these holy places. I forgot which one. And Baha'u'llah had come and saw him, and he had an orange. Baha'u'llah did. And he took this orange and gave it to Mr. Samandari. Mr. Samandari took the orange, just got an orange from Baha'u'llah, himself. He was so happy. And Baha'u'llah walked away. And then he looked back and he saw all his friends saw that he got the orange from Baha'u'llah. And they immediately rushed toward him. Why? To get the orange. And when he saw this, he started running too. And the story is, as he was running and they were running after him, he started peeling the orange and started eating it to make sure that he gets all of it in before they catch him. And he did. So by the time the kids reached him, he had finished the orange of Baha'u'llah. Why is that a funny story? Because I just told you, he met Baha'u'llah, he met Abdul Baha, he met the Guardian, he was there at the establishment of the Universal House of Justice, and he died in the late 1960s, ladies and gentlemen. So when people would ask him, hey, how are you so healthy? His answer was, because I ate the orange that Baha'u'llah gave me. So that's why Mr. Samandari is a very unique and special human being, actually. So that was Mr. Samandari. But the other story, I want to read this story. That's why I did this. Give me a second here. Let me get back to that. Junaidi Garden, where is it? Yeah. This is a fascinating story. I have never seen something like this. That's why I want to share it with you, and I want to read it, parts of it. So when Baha'u'llah was once at Junaidi Garden, and like I said, he would invite everybody to come. One day they went there. The garden was absolutely gorgeous. The flowers were gorgeous. The air was gorgeous. And this story actually comes from one of the friends that was there. His name is Mirza Habibullah Afnan, related to the Bab himself. He says the story. He says that we were at the garden and we just had lunch. Lunch was prepared for us. And after lunch, Abdul Baha came. So he didn't come with us in the morning. He had come after lunch, sometime in mid-afternoon. And Baha'u'llah did this many, many times. He would say, the master is coming. Hasten to welcome him. And this gentleman, Mr. Afnan, says Baha'u'llah did this many times to remind the people of who Abdul Baha was, and the importance and mindfulness of the covenant. So when Abdul Baha came, he asked everyone to go greet Abdul Baha and welcome him into the garden. So can you imagine? You're sitting with Baha'u'llah, and he says, go welcome Abdul Baha. You all get up, and now Baha'u'llah's by himself, and they all would go to welcome Abdul Baha. And Abdul Baha would be brought into the room of Baha'u'llah, and with utmost respect, he came in the room. He sat at Baha'u'llah's feet, and then he asked everyone else to sit, and everyone else sat. And this is what Baha'u'llah said in that occasion. He says the following: the garden was not pleasant enough this morning, but now with the arrival of the master, it has become most pleasant. Then he turns to Abdul Baha and he says, it would have been exceedingly good if you had come this morning. Because he just said that the garden wasn't as pleasant until you got here. Basically, why didn't you come sooner? Is the beautiful statement by Baha'u'llah. But listen to what Abdul Baha says, ladies and gentlemen. He says, the Mutsarif Pasha, which was one of the governors, you could say, and some other of the city's inhabitants sent word that they were coming. They were coming to where Baha'u'llah lived. On your behalf, I had to receive them and offer them hospitality. So Abdullah is saying the reason I couldn't come earlier, I was fulfilling a duty on your behalf, basically. And this is what Baha'u'llah says then. The master is our shield and the shield of everyone else. All live at ease, all know utmost comfort and tranquility, associating with men such as these is very, very difficult. It is the master who stands up to everything and supplies the means for the well-being and peace of all the friends. May God preserve him from the evil of the envious and the inimical. Isn't that beautiful? So he's reminding us of who Abdul Baha is, not only then, now, and into the future. So we got to remember the importance. But here's the favorite part of the story that I absolutely love. This is Baha'u'llah saying, I've never seen this interaction with Abdul Baha before. So this is amazing. He says, Baha'u'llah, he says, one day in Baghdad, a beggar asked for alms. Asked Baha'u'llah. So one day in Baghdad, Baha'u'llah says, a beggar asked him for alms. We gave him one majidi, a coin, a little coin. And he, the beggar, told Baha'u'llah, go in peace, young man. May Hazrat Abbas give you support. Hazrat Abbas means the Blessed One. He is saying to Baha'u'llah, go and hopefully Abdul Baha will give you support. Isn't that amazing? That he, first of all, didn't know who Baha'u'llah was, but he knew who Abdul Baha was because Abdul Baha would take care of all these people. And he's telling Baha'u'llah, hopefully Abdul Baha will take care of you. And then Baha'u'llah says, the beggar prayed for us. It was a good prayer. Absolutely gorgeous story from Baha'u'llah telling the friends about Abdul Baha. Okay. If I'm boring you, you better tell me now because I'm going to keep on going. Okay, here I go. So let's continue, shall we? So this was in the Junaidi Gardens, and these stories I heard there, and they really touched my heart. And then we go to absolutely gorgeous here in Baji. This is a picture from the mansion on one side, and then of course the picture from the mansion on the balcony looking into the shrine of Baha'u'llah. As many of you who do know me, I have family everywhere. This is my uncle who's a pioneer in Corsica and pioneered all his life, my dad's brother. So it was so touching for me to be at not only the shrine, but literally we went to the threshold together. It was he's one of the spiritual giants in my life. And this tree, if you can see in the background, everyone, this is the shrine of Baha'u'llah in the background right here, right? This tree is a fig tree. And some people have told me that this fig tree is over 1,000 years old. Can you imagine? And you could see the figs still that it produces. I went to touch one fig, it fell on my hand. Guess what I did? I ate it. I ate it. It was so good. This is an amazing tree. And the reason I wanted to take this picture, Baha'u'llah has rested on this tree, ladies and gentlemen. He has rested on this tree. And there's one story I heard that he was resting on this tree and he was reading the Kitab-i-Ilan, the Book of Certitude. And one of the friends saw that he was reading the Kitab-i-Ilan, as we know, the Baha'u'llah wrote the Kitab-i-Ilan, and approached Baha'u'llah and said, my beloved, you're reading the Kitab-i-Ilan. And Baha'u'llah turned to him and said, yes, this is a really good book. So that's the human side of Baha'u'llah making that statement, you know, but the importance. So what did I do? I don't know if you could see it. I had the Kitab-i-Ilan and I started reading just a few pages from it. It was just so beautiful to do that at this absolutely gorgeous tree. So it's one of my friends that was there with me, Nabi Hayati from Virginia. But the reason I wanted to take this picture, I was so fortunate One of my good friends that's been serving there for 30 some years, her name is Colleen. She was taken by Adib Taherzadeh. Adib Taherzadeh is the person that wrote the Revelation of Baha'u'llah. She took Colleen through the exact steps and pathway when Baha'u'llah entered Akka till he went to the prison. And the reason Adib Taherzadeh knows every step Baha'u'llah took is because his father was there. So his father told Adib Taherzadeh told Colleen showed us. So this is absolutely what I'm about to show you. I can't show you the whole path, but I'm going to show you some highlights. This is the Sea Gate. Now, what's interesting, this Sea Gate is part of a restaurant, and this is the replica of the actual Sea Gate. The actual Sea Gate is in a museum, and this replica looks exactly like that one, even the rust and all that. So it's beautiful. This is what Baha'u'llah would have seen when he entered Akka from the sea. And as you know, that was in 1868, August 31st. It was a very hot day. There was hardly any wind. They say it took 4 hours to go from Haifa, which takes us 20 minutes by car, 4 hours from Haifa to Akka because there was no wind. So it was a very hot day. And of course, one of the stories we know, the ladies were told to be put on shoulders of men. And Abdul Baha said, no way. And he brought chairs, and the ladies would sit in the chairs, and he and another person would take them to the Sea Gate. This is where they would come, and they would enter. Baha'u'llah was then taken to this building. This building is where the edict was read of that he's a prisoner and that he will now be in prison. There were about 70 people with Baha'u'llah. So Baha'u'llah would be taken here. Now, along the path, he passed the bazaar. I want to show you the next picture. This picture is one of the stores that Baha'u'llah passed. Why am I showing this particular picture? Is because the store owner of this particular store had the whole town, the whole Fort City knew that a holy man is coming and he's going to be in prison. The owner of this store was pregnant, and she said to her husband, listen, they say a holy man is about to come. What I want you to do is go and seek him out and look in his eyes. You will know if he's holy or not, and come back and tell me if he's holy. And if he is holy, we will have our child tonight, and that child will be blessed. So her husband went out. Baha'u'llah is passing the store. Baha'u'llah looks into the eyes of Baha'u'llah, immediately comes back and says, that's a holy man. She has birth. She gives birth. And the child was blessed because she marries, they become one of the first Baha'is of Akka. And she marries, the child marries eventually the cook of Baha'u'llah. And they have a beautiful child, and they're still very firm in the faith. But this property you're looking at is one of the first Baha'i endowments that were given in 1920. They gave their store to the faith as an endowment. So this was one of the first properties that was owned by the Baha'i endowment in Akka. So it's an amazing story of this family and some insights of who the people were. So not everybody in Akka was against Baha'u'llah. Then he was brought here to the top of these stairs. These are the actual stairs that Baha'u'llah took. And I don't think the railings were there, but the stairs are there. And then he entered that door. And then eventually, as we know, this is the prison cell. And these are the two windows here on the right top is where Baha'u'llah was. And this is where he would put his hand out. People from Iran, it would take him 3.5 months. They would come, he would put put his hand out, and that's all they could see, and then they would go back. It was a very sad story. One of these early believers was partially blind. He couldn't even see the hand of Baha'u'llah, but he still made the trip. And that was one of the stories that Mirza Mehdi, it just obviously hurt him so much. And when Baha'u'llah gave him an option to live or not to live, he said, I'm going to sacrifice myself so you can be free and people can see you. That was one of the stories that impacted him, that almost a blind man would come and he couldn't even see the hand of Baha'u'llah. This is this is the, of course, it didn't look like that at that time, but the sea. There's a story here that there's a proverb in the Muslim world that if you count 40 waves of the sea here, and there is a tablet from Baha'u'llah, that all your past sins would be forgiven. Baha'u'llah upped it a bit and said all your past and future sins will be forgiven. So I tried it, and I'm telling you guys, it's so hard to count 40 waves because they come all over the place. But I gave it my best shot, but I'm sure I missed a few. So it's almost like a puzzle to do this 40 waves. Let me show you why. Let me see if I can find it. It's actually a great shot that I have of the waves. Let me see. It's worth it. It's worth it.
You get points for trying?
What?
Do you get points for trying?
I don't think so, Maureen, but I did my best. Huh?
It's all or nothing?
It's all or nothing, baby. That's how it works. Let's see if I can. Yeah, here you go. It's worth it. Let's see. Where are you? Oh, yeah, share your screen. Here you go. You try to count those waves. It's not that easy, huh? See how many waves are coming from so many places. And that's why it's not that easy. But it was fun. It was fun trying for sure. Okay. All right, everybody. This is the house of Abud. This was one of the first homes. Baha'u'llah went to one or two different smaller homes, but this is where he eventually ended up. First, it was called the House of Udi Kamar, which is behind it here. You can't see it. That's where the Kitab al-Aqdas was revealed. So this is a very important house. Baha'u'llah was definitely on this balcony. He was still a prisoner, but at least he can come on this balcony and walk the balcony. And of course, Abdul Wahab was here as well. But it's in this place that the Kitab al-Aqdas was revealed. This is the house of Abdul Baha. And here I want to tell you a story about not only the house of Abdul Baha, but we were, and I'm sure Jacqueline will remember this because she was there as well. We were at a pilgrim talk where a member of the Universal House of Justice, Steve Birkeland, was giving the talk. And, you know, he actually said many beautiful things, but two things he said that I want to emphasize. He said, we're about to embark on the 9-year plan as Baha'is. And our job is to make sure we don't get distracted from what we need to do. And he said there's two types of distractions. One is yourself. So what is he saying? He said, you can't be so hard on yourself. You are not perfect. You will make mistakes, but don't allow yourself to become a distraction and say, I'm not good enough. I can't do that. That's impossible. That is a distraction. And it's important to remember that. So that was one. The other distraction is not to be distracted by other people and what he called fellow creatures. Don't be disturbed by people that don't see it the way you do. Don't be disturbed because you can't please them. that's a distraction as well. And if you do that, then you have lost focus and you can't continue. Then he read this unbelievable tablet that has been recently translated, which I am going to share with you. It's in the Baha'i Reference Library. So I just want you to remember what he said, and let's read this together. This is an unbelievable tablet. This is from Abdul Baha. He's the all-glorious. O thou servant of the sacred threshold, it is possible, nay, most easy to please God, for if only one is pure in heart, his good pleasure is attained. So let's stop right there. Abdullah is saying it is possible. No, it's actually pretty easy to please God. That's a pretty heavy statement. For if only one is pure in heart, his good pleasure is attained. But let's continue. But to please the people is of the utmost difficulty. God himself did not succeed in pleasing the people. Oh my God. How can thou and I hope to do it? Still, we should strive as far as possible, for that which cannot be achieved in its entirety should not be discarded in its entirety. It doesn't mean we don't try, but even God has not succeeded in this particular case. Now watch this, everybody. It is my hope that through the infinite bounties of the Almighty Lord, thou mayest achieve both. Abdullah is saying, I hope you can achieve it, because I, for one, have not succeeded. God willing that thou mayest succeed, and pray in turn for my success. For the good pleasure of God and that of his servants are the greatest of divine bestowals. Indeed, God's good pleasure resideth in our being pleased with his servants. And then he gives a prayer on how to do this. But before I read the prayer, did we just understand what Abdullah said? He's saying, I, for one, have not succeeded. So why are we so hard on ourselves that we can't please people? We got to remember this. We do our best, though. He says it. That which cannot be achieved in its entirety should not be discarded in its entirety. And that's an Arabic proverb, by the way, that he quotes. But Abdullah is saying, pray for me that I could be successful in this, which is amazing. But now let's read the prayer that he wrote about this. O Lord, graciously assist me and this servant of thine. Isn't that amazing? How many prayers have you seen that Abdul Baha puts you in with him? I've never seen it. Abdul Baha is putting you in with him. He's saying, oh Lord, graciously assist me, that's Abdul Baha, and this servant, that's you, of thine, to attain unto this supreme bounty, that we may be pleased with everyone, and they may be pleased with us. I beseech God to grant that we both may be confirmed in service to his holy threshold. The glory of glories rest upon thee. Absolutely gorgeous prayer. Absolutely gorgeous statement. And why we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves and not allow ourselves to be distracted. Okay, now we are almost, oh, good, we're almost done. I want to just show you a few more things. Across the street is where Ruya Khanum, the wife of the beloved guardian, is buried. I just want to show you something here. Let me see if I can zoom it in. As you can see, it's only her name, and it's only the date. That's it. Now you would think, really? This is Ruya Khanum? Why? Because she wanted it. Did you know that there's a story that Ali Nakjavani, whose wife traveled with her so much, they were at dinner together once, And Ruya Khanum turned to Ali Nakhjavani, who she knew very well, and said, Ali, and Mr. Nakhjavani said, yes, ma'am. She said, when I die, on my gravestone, you put my name, the date, and all I want you to write is she tried. That's it. Ali Nakhjavani said, ma'am. She goes, I'm serious. I don't want anything else. Anyway, the story is that that night he couldn't sleep. And his wife the next morning said, you were tossing and turning. Why couldn't you sleep? And he said, you know that story Ruya Khanum told us last night? She goes, yeah, that's incredible. She tried. He goes, yeah. If she wrote she tried, what the heck can we write? That's Ali Nakhjavani, who served so much. So ladies and gentlemen, if he's worried about what he can write, what are we going to write is what you need to think about. So it's all about service, right? Of course, the House of Justice did not do that, but they didn't write anything else, just to stick with her. And the other thing I want to tell you is this piece of property is literally across the street from Abdul Baha's house. This piece of property had nothing to do with Baha'i history or anything. So the question is, why do we own it? And the reason is, when Ruya Khanum got married, she started and they lived here, right? They lived in the upper part. You can't see it. There's Shohi Effendi built 3 rooms up here, and it became his apartment, and he lived there with Ruya Khanum. But anyway, she started gardening at Abdul Baha's house. Abdul Baha's gardener came to Shohi Effendi and said, I love you, but your wife is starting to garden in Abdul Baha's garden. We can't do this. So Shohi Effendi, what did he do? He bought this piece of land. It was also a good buffer between all the properties. And he told Ruya Khanum, this is your garden. Do what you want with it. And that's what she did. All the flowers you see, all the paths you see, she put it herself. This is her garden. And the beloved House of Justice buried her in her own garden, as you can see. So that was our beloved Ruya Khanum, which brings us to London. I was lucky to be going through London before I came home. So I completed really a beautiful pilgrimage. And this is the resting place of Shohi Effendi, our beloved guardian who passed away in 1957. This eagle sitting on a globe. And did you know the only continent that is outlined on the globe is the continent of Africa? Because he loved Africa so much. That's it. It's the only continent that you could see on the globe. And there's so many Baha'is here that are buried around the property. And actually, we own a good chunk of this cemetery now. There's 12 sections. We own 2 sections of it, which is interesting. And this is what I want to show you. The owners of this cemetery have obviously figured out that Shohi Effendi is buried here and how important it is. So they transferred stone from Mount Carmel and placed it on their own around the cemetery and says this is in honor of Shohi Effendi, who's buried here. So a piece of Haifa is in the cemetery. And they've done that in 5 big pieces of stone from Haifa are placed in the cemetery in London. So there's a piece of Haifa there as well. Okay, everybody. That's 7:59, right on time. Here I go.
It's like you also timed the quality of your voice, Shahin, to just last the perfect amount of time, because I can hear that your voice is giving way. There's lots of applause and appreciation.
Thank you.
Shahin, I have my own set of questions, but I think we'll see if you have some time for a few questions.
Of course, of course.
Yeah. So Shahin, thank you very much. Like your memory is incredible. Your attention to detail and just the small things that really help to make us feel like we're there or that we understand it better. So I will turn it over. Shala, let's go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. I want to say that as you spoke, you took us through the whole area. And some of us who have been on pilgrimage, it was like deja vu. It was like remembering details of our pilgrimage, and it has been wonderful. John, I want to mention that in the early days, I wasn't one of those lucky ones, but Ron was. When you went on pilgrimage, you were the guest of Universal House of Justice in the 60s. So you actually lived in those buildings.
Yeah.
You stayed at Bahji, and you stayed in the guest house just below the Shrine of the Bab. So that was actually fantastic. And also, when my first pilgrimage many years ago, there was no gardens. There were only the two top gardens which Effendi had built. And you walked through the houses. You walked upstairs and then you came to an area and then you walked around that and you went up the stairs. So it's wonderful. These gardens have made all the difference. And also talking about, as a Canadian, when we went on pilgrimage, Rui Khanu invited us to tea in the room below their apartment, which was her tea room, which used to be Abdul Baha's. And a lot of her relics now, which are at our shrine. So if you come to Montreal, we will take you when we open it, because at the moment only the basement is open. And she would sit in that room, serve us tea and cakes and cookies, and talk about her parents. Tell us stories about her mom and dad. And also, she took us across the street into this garden and told us that this is where she retreated to and would sit there to meditate and pray after Shoghi Effendi passed away. And what was so interesting in those days, we owned one of the buildings. Those were pilgrim houses, Western and Eastern. We owned one, but we didn't own the other one. So did you get a chance to go to the one that we now own since mid 2010 or something?
I've been talking about Montreal, right, Shala?
No, I'm talking about Haifa.
Haifa. Okay. So which building are you talking about?
I'm talking about the garden across Abdul Baha's home, which was Rui Khanum's garden.
Yes, garden. Yeah.
He used to sit there and meditate. And
yes.
So there are two buildings. One is the Western and one
then one is Haifa Israel. Yeah. So as 3-day visitors, we couldn't go to those, but I think as pilgrims, they go to the Western Pilgrim House for sure.
Yes.
And of course, the other building was the old seat of the Universal House of Justice. But and in the basement of that building is where Shoghi Effendi would meet the pilgrims and talk to them before they left.
But before that, it was also the East Pilgrim House, because in those days they didn't mix together.
Exactly. That's right.
So the other thing that's fascinating, you went to Shoghi Effendi's at the Northern Cemetery. When we were youth in Britain, every Saturday night we would have deepenings, and then we would go dancing at these dance halls called Makkah, which shocked the Baha'i community, very, very conservative Baha'i community in the 60s. And then 3 o'clock in the morning, we would drive up to the cemetery. And now they don't have that. There used to be an avenue with trees around it. We could walk up that and get to the cemetery, to the guardian's grave, resting place, as the sun was rising, to say prayers. And then we would still stay there, pray, and then go and have breakfast, go home and sleep till the next morning when we had to go to school. But I'm so sorry they destroyed the avenue. But were you able to also visit the other graves? Because there are quite a few well-known Baha'is buried there.
Yeah, I did spend some time visiting there. There's actually a number of Knights of Baha'u'llah that are buried there, which is beautiful. And of course, many, clearly there were Baha'is that I don't know. So yeah, what's fascinating is at the, where the beloved guardian is buried, there's 3 grave sites inside where the beloved guardian is buried. And these individuals also passed away around the time of the guardian. And they're there forever. And their graves are so well maintained because they're inside the grounds of the beloved guardian. And of course, the House of Justice, we don't touch these grave sites, but
you know that the original eagle was robbed.
Yes, yes, I heard that. Yeah.
So this one is a replica. So I was just wondering if did you? I mean, I don't know if it's slightly different or.
I don't remember the original one. I just remember what I saw. Yeah. Cool. Anybody else? Questions, thoughts?
Thanks, Sheila. I forgot to stop recording, so I'll do that now.
Okay.